He said no to a bachelor party. His family threw one anyway and expected him to just show you. His own father looked him in the eye and lied to his face. Not a small lie, not a white lie, a fully constructed cover story complete with a fake boat project, fake dinner plans, and a fake reason to keep him from leaving early. And when the lie finally collapsed, the response was not an apology. It was an argument. This man had said no. Clearly. Repeatedly. And his family decided that what he wanted simply did not matter enough to respect. Let me take you back to where this whole thing started, because the setup here is important. Our guy is getting married in just over a month. Small wedding, close family only, fewer than 25 people on the guest list, dinner at a restaurant his fiancée loves. That is the whole event. No drama, no spectacle, just something intimate and personal. He and his fiancée had clearly thought hard about what kind of wedding actually reflected who they are, not what looked impressive on social media or lived up to some inherited idea of how a wedding is supposed to go. They wanted something real. Something that felt like them. And from the very moment he got engaged, he made one thing absolutely crystal clear to everyone around him. He did not want a bachelor party. He said it out loud. He said it more than once. He thought the message had landed. He was wrong. The first crack appeared on Mother's Day of all days, which is already a day loaded with family energy and expectation. The kind of day where everyone is gathered, emotions are running a little warmer than usual, and the air has that particular weight of people trying to hold everything together and be present for each other. His sister pulled him aside quietly, away from the noise of the celebration, and let him know that the supposed boat help his dad had asked for the following weekend was not actually about a boat at all. His dad and his brother had been quietly planning a bachelor party behind his back for who knows how long, using the boat as a decoy to get him there without tipping him off. His sister told him because she did not want him walking blindly into something he had already said he did not want. She respected his answer enough to protect him from the situation. And honestly, good for her. She was the only person in this story who actually listened to him. Now here is where it gets interesting, because of how he chose to handle it. He did not blow up. He did not call his dad immediately and start a fight right there in the middle of a family gathering on Mother's Day. He sat on it through the rest of the day because he did not want to ruin the occasion for his mom and his grandmother. Think about what that actually requires. He was sitting with fresh anger, the particular sting of discovering that people you love had looked you in the face and decided your preference was a problem to route around, and he held it quietly inside himself so that no one else's day would be damaged by it. That takes a certain kind of emotional discipline, especially when you are genuinely hurt. He waited, he stayed composed, and then the next day he made his move carefully. He texted his dad about the boat, played it completely normal, confirmed he would come and help, and mentioned casually that he would need to leave afterward because of commitments with his stepson. He was giving his dad an out. He was essentially saying, without saying it directly, I know something is going on, here is a door you can walk through gracefully, here is your chance to come clean before this becomes something bigger than it needs to be. His dad did not take it. Instead he pushed back, started piling on reasons for him to stay longer, dinner plans, boat rides, gratitude gestures. He kept sweetening the deal, kept adding more to the pile, instead of just pausing and telling the truth. You could almost picture the awkwardness of that text exchange, his dad knowing that the lie was shaking, and choosing anyway to prop it up with more words rather than let it fall. So he pushed a little harder and said no to the extras. And finally, unable to keep the story going, his dad admitted it. He confessed that the whole thing was a cover for a bachelor party. And that is the moment the real conversation started. He told his father, again, directly and without softening it, that he did not want a bachelor party, that he had always said he did not want one, and that he would not be attending this one. His father's response to that was something that I think a lot of people will recognize instantly as a classic pressure move. He said it was too far in to cancel. He said food had been bought, drinks had been bought, friends had been invited, someone had even flown in from out of state. And then came the line that I think is the most revealing thing anyone said in this entire situation. He said, if you come you will end up enjoying it, so why fight it? Oh wow. Let me just sit with that for a second. That sentence right there is the entire problem summarized in one breath. His father genuinely believed that the issue was not that his son did not want this, but that his son did not know yet that he wanted it. That his preference was simply a misunderstanding of his own feelings that a good party would correct. As if 20-something years of knowing his own child had taught him that his son's clearly stated preferences were just obstacles to be overcome rather than decisions to be respected. That is not love. That is control dressed up as celebration. Now the out-of-state friend detail is one of the most uncomfortable parts of this whole story, because that person had absolutely nothing to do with any of the planning or the deception. He just accepted an invitation and made travel arrangements based on information he had been given in good faith. He probably packed a bag and bought a flight thinking he was going to do something genuinely kind for someone he cared about. He had no idea the whole thing had been constructed around a lie. So when our guy found out a friend had booked a flight for this party he did not want, he did not wait. He called immediately, explained the full situation, apologized for what everyone else had put this friend through without his knowledge, and told him not to come. He did not let his friend spend money or time on something built on a foundation of deception. And his friend, to his massive credit, handled it with complete grace. He was already coming into town early for other reasons and they made different plans together. That is a real friendship. No guilt, no pressure, no dramatic reaction, just two people choosing each other honestly. Then the family texts started rolling in. All day. From multiple people. All of them landing on the same word, selfish. His father called him selfish. Others joined in, each one adding their weight to the pile, like they had all quietly agreed on the framing before they started sending. Picture what that afternoon must have looked like for him. Every time his phone lit up, another person he loves was telling him that protecting his own clearly stated boundary made him a bad person. That the real problem here was not that they had lied to him or steamrolled his answer, but that he had the nerve to make their deception inconvenient. The word selfish is a powerful weapon in a family argument because it puts the accused on the defensive immediately. It reframes the entire situation so that the person who said no becomes the aggressor, and the people who did not listen become the victims. He had to sit with that framing being thrown at him all afternoon. The argument being made was that this was not just about him, that it was about their happiness and their desire to celebrate him, and that refusing to show up was a betrayal of their effort and their love. And I want to address that argument head-on because it sounds reasonable on the surface but it completely falls apart the moment you examine it. Here is the thing about gifts and celebrations. If someone tells you they do not want something, and you give it to them anyway, that is not a gift for them. That is a gift for you. You are doing something that makes you feel good, that fulfills your idea of what should happen, that satisfies your vision of how this moment in their life should look. And then when they do not perform the gratitude you expected, you call them ungrateful. But they never asked for it. They specifically said they did not want it. You made a choice they explicitly asked you not to make, and then handed them the bill for it in the form of guilt and accusation. His brother and his dad had every opportunity over the weeks they were planning this to check in one more time. To say, hey, we know you said no, but we are thinking about doing something small and low-key, how do you feel about that now? They chose not to do that. They chose instead to plan in secret, to deceive him with a fake story, and to put him in a position where social pressure and guilt and logistics would make it harder for him to say no. That is manipulation, even if it came from a place of genuine affection. The intent being loving does not change the method being wrong. You can care about someone deeply and still choose to override them, and when you do, the care does not cancel out the override. Let me also say something about the logic of the sunk cost argument, because that is essentially what his dad was using. The food is bought. The drinks are bought. The plans are made. The friend has flown in. It is too far in to cancel. That argument sounds like it carries weight, and in the moment, sitting across from someone you love who is looking at you with genuine disappointment, it probably does feel heavy. But here is the thing. None of those costs were incurred with his permission or his knowledge. He never agreed to this. He never said yes. He never gave anyone even the smallest reason to believe he had quietly changed his mind somewhere along the way. So the fact that money was spent and plans were made is entirely on the people who made those choices without once picking up the phone and saying, "Are you sure you do not want this? Because we are about to go pretty far down this road." They skipped that conversation deliberately. They skipped it because they already knew what the answer would be, and they did not want to hear it again. That is the part that matters. The expense was a strategy, not an accident. You cannot trap someone in your decision by making the decision expensive enough, and then frame their refusal as the source of the problem. That is not how consent works. That is not how respect works. You cannot spend your way into someone's cooperation and then act wounded when they decline to be purchased. And here is the part that I think cuts the deepest. His fiancée and his stepson are his priority right now. He said so clearly when he explained why he declined the party in the first place. He is not in his party phase anymore. He has a family he is stepping into with intention and care. He has a child who matters to him enormously, a child who is watching how the adults around him handle commitment and respect. And his own father's response to all of that is to plan something in secret, lie about it for weeks, guilt him when he refuses to go along with it, and then call him selfish for having the audacity to decide how he wants to spend his own weekend before his own wedding. That is the full picture here. That is what was actually happening underneath all the noise about food and flights and effort. He was not selfish. He was cornered. He was surrounded by people who love him and who used that love as the justification for ignoring him. That is a uniquely disorienting kind of pressure, because you cannot dismiss it the way you would dismiss a stranger being rude to you. These are people whose opinion of him genuinely matters. These are people he will sit across from at Thanksgiving for the rest of his life. The stakes of holding the line were real, and he held it anyway. That matters. The verdict here is clear and I do not feel any need to soften it. He said no. His family said they did not care. That is where the disrespect lies, not in his decision to skip the party but in their decision to plan it after he had already answered the question. You do not get to override someone's boundaries and then demand their gratitude for it. You just do not. Not on Mother's Day, not at a bachelor party, not anywhere. The right move now is exactly what he planned. He should not show up. He should spend that evening having dinner with his friend from out of state just like they planned. And when his family brings it up, and they will, he should be calm, direct, and clear. He respected them enough to say no clearly. They chose not to respect him back. That is the conversation that needs to happen, and skipping the party forces it into the open in a way that cannot be ignored or laughed off. Some people are going to read this and say he should have just gone, just made it easy, just let them have their moment. And to those people I say this. A man who cannot say no to his own family about his own bachelor party before his own wedding is going to have a very long marriage ahead of him. He did exactly what he should have done. He meant no, he said no, and he is going to live no. That is not selfishness. That is called knowing yourself. And his family should be proud of him for it, even if right now they are not. She bailed on the vacation deal, then wanted back in the moment she realized she made a mistake. She looked at the deal on the table and said no thanks. Then she looked at everything else available, realized she had made a massive mistake, and came back expecting the seat she had just given up to still be warm and waiting for her. That is not how this works. Let us get the full picture here because the details actually matter quite a bit in this one. This is a situation about two families, a sister and our narrator, planning a vacation together at a rental home. They had worked out an arrangement where the sister and her group would take the first 2 weeks and our narrator's family would take the last 3 weeks with a few days of overlap. 5 weeks total, two different families sharing a home across a staggered schedule. It was negotiated carefully over time, with both sides agreeing to the terms and the timing and the way the days would be divided between them. This was not a vague conversation over dinner that nobody wrote down. This was not a passing suggestion floated and forgotten. This was a real plan with real structure built around real calendar dates that real people were going to arrange their lives around. There was a deal on the table and both parties had, in every meaningful sense, agreed to it. Then they went through the process of actually locking it in. The rental was tentatively booked with the understanding that it would only become final once the sister came and saw the place and gave her confirmation. So she went. She visited the property in person. She looked around the space, took in the layout, walked through the rooms, considered whether it suited the needs of her family and the shape of the trip she had in mind. She thought about it with the full weight of the decision in front of her, standing in the actual place, not just looking at photos on a screen. And then she said, "Book it." Not maybe. Not let me think on it. Not I will get back to you in a few days. She said book it, which is about as clear and unambiguous a green light as you can possibly get from another human being. The only reason the booking did not go through immediately was because the host needed to check a few things on their end. That small administrative delay turned out to be lucky in the most frustrating possible way, because what happened next was a complete and total reversal. A couple of days later the sister changed her mind entirely. She decided she did not want to book it anymore and said she was going to go find somewhere else for her family. Just like that. No warning. No extended conversation where she laid out her concerns and gave anyone a chance to address them. No real explanation offered to soften the blow or even acknowledge the disruption her reversal was creating for the people around her who had structured a 5-week plan partly around her participation. She had toured the property, approved it with her own mouth, given the explicit green light, and now she was simply withdrawing from the whole arrangement as if the agreement had been purely optional all along. She was out. So our narrator, rather than letting the whole rental collapse and losing the property entirely, went back to the host, explained the situation with honesty and good faith, and arranged to keep the property for just the 3 weeks their own family needed. They did not sulk or waste time being bitter about the disruption. They adapted quickly and cleanly. They made a decision and they moved forward, which is exactly what a reasonable and mature person does when someone else pulls the rug out without warning. And then they told their adult children about the updated dates so their kids could check their own schedules and potentially come for part of those 3 weeks. This is just normal family planning. You have a window, you let the relevant people know, and you start figuring out who can make it and weaving everyone's plans together around a shared opportunity while there is still time to do so. Nothing unusual, nothing complicated. Just a family coordinating in the ordinary way families do. So now we have a situation where our narrator has adapted to the change, adjusted the booking, informed their family, and is actively working out the details for their own 3-week vacation. Plans are beginning to take shape. People are starting to look at calendars. The sister, meanwhile, has been out there in the market looking at other options for her 2 weeks. And here is where it gets truly rich. She went looking, she compared prices across different properties, she checked availability for the dates she needed, and she discovered what our narrator probably already had a strong suspicion about. The alternatives for 2 weeks were significantly worse in quality and significantly more expensive than what she had walked away from. Twice the cost, apparently. Maybe more. So she came back. She decided she wanted back into the original deal after all, the very same deal she had voluntarily exited without so much as a real explanation, let alone an apology for the chaos her exit had caused. Oh, to be surprised by something you already chose to walk away from. I want to be really precise about what happened here because I think it matters quite a lot to understanding why our narrator is not in the wrong. The sister did not back out because something went wrong on anyone else's end. She did not back out because the property turned out to be misrepresented in the listing or because the dates had some conflict she only discovered later. She did not back out because something genuinely unexpected and unavoidable came up in her personal life that forced her hand and left her no other choice. She backed out because she changed her mind. That is the whole story. She had confirmed with full information available to her, she had seen the property with her own eyes, she had walked through every room and said go ahead, and then she simply decided she wanted something different. And when that decision did not work out the way she had hoped, when the grass on the other side turned out to be patchy and expensive and far less appealing than it had looked from a distance, she came back expecting things to be exactly as she had left them, as though time had frozen in place and everyone around her had paused their own lives and plans and decision-making out of loyalty while she finished reconsidering. But things were not as she had left them. Our narrator had made real moves. They had spoken with the host, adjusted the booking down to 3 weeks, and looped in their adult children who were now actively looking at their schedules and checking whether the dates would work around their own commitments. Real plans were beginning to form. Real excitement was quietly building around a space that the sister had voluntarily and clearly given up. People were tentatively rearranging their own schedules and holding those dates in their minds as something that might actually happen. And our narrator told the sister exactly that. The kids have been told. They have first right to those dates. If it turns out the kids cannot come, then maybe the sister could have those first 2 weeks. But that is a maybe with conditions attached, not a guaranteed welcome back delivered with a warm smile as if nothing had happened and nobody had been inconvenienced by her change of heart. The sister's situation here, while understandably frustrating to experience from the inside, is entirely a consequence of a choice she made with full information in hand. She knew what the property was like because she had been there. She had said book it with her own words after seeing it with her own eyes. And then she walked away from it by her own free choice with no external pressure forcing her to do so. At that point the door was closed. Our narrator had no obligation, moral or otherwise, to hold it open indefinitely while she explored alternatives and eventually decided the original option was the best one after all. That is not how agreements between people work, even when those people share the same family name. Now some people might argue that family should get a little more grace here, that you ought to bend a bit for a sibling, that in the big picture of a long relationship this is not worth holding a hard line over. And I hear that argument. Family relationships carry weight that ordinary transactions do not. But there is a meaningful limit to how much accommodation is reasonable when the other person created the problem themselves through a deliberate and unforced choice made with complete information. The concern our narrator has about looking unreliable to the host is also entirely valid and should not be waved away. Going back to a host and asking to expand the booking after having just reduced it, because a third party changed their mind twice in the same week, is genuinely awkward. It risks making our narrator look disorganized or difficult. It could affect the warmth of the relationship with the host and could realistically reduce the chances of being welcomed back in future years. That is a real cost worth protecting against. The edit our narrator added at the end of their post actually shows a lot of wisdom and emotional clarity. They are locking in plans with their kids first, staying completely out of the sister's separate arrangements, and pointing her directly toward the host if she wants to pursue those first 2 weeks on her own. That is exactly the right call. It removes our narrator from the center of a problem they did not create and never asked to be responsible for managing. It protects their own booking and the goodwill they have built with the host. And it hands the sister a clear and fair path forward that she is entirely capable of walking herself, without needing to drag her sibling back into the middle of her own decisions. The verdict here is simple and clean. You do not get to give something up and then take it back as if nothing happened in between, as if the world stood still and the people around you simply waited, plans unformed and lives unscheduled, for you to finish making up your mind. The sister made a unilateral choice that disrupted the entire arrangement, and our narrator adapted to that disruption in good faith and without complaint. The children who were given first right to those dates deserve to have that promise kept. And our narrator deserves to not have their vacation planning turned into a revolving door of someone else's second thoughts. They were not wrong to say no. They were not being harsh or cold or unnecessarily rigid. They were being fair. And sometimes fair feels a little cold when you are the one on the receiving end of a consequence you created for yourself. That is not a reason to back down. If the sister sorts out her own arrangements with the host and gets those first 2 weeks, great. If she does not, that is a lesson about knowing the value of a good deal before you walk away from it. Either way, it is no longer our narrator's problem to solve. Drop a comment below telling me which story hit harder, the bachelor party situation or the vacation flip-flop. And if you enjoyed this video, a like and subscribe would mean a lot.